Welcome to Mr. Mover Manager Help. Today we are going to talk about setting up employee compensation. Setting up employee compensation is a two-step process. The first step is to create the employee compensation, and the second step is to assign that compensation to the appropriate employees. In step one, you're going to go to Administration, Lists, Resources, Employee Compensation Methods. Within this window, we will create employee compensation methods that can be used by multiple employees. To create a new compensation, simply click the New button, and it brings up an employee compensation method window. Now we're going to give it a name, and let's start with something simple like sales person. All right. Now you have a field here for notes if you want to make any notes regarding this. In the details area, this is where you're going to enter in how this salesperson is going to be paid. So let's look at our options. If we add a detail, you can give it a description. So let's call it, they're going to get paid a percentage of the line haul. So let's just call it line haul. Now under type, we're going to drop this down. You can see all the different options that we give you as to how you can pay somebody. Per hour, percentage of the invoice item, percentage of the revenue item, per piece, per stop, per mile, per weight, or a flat rate. So since we said he's going to get paid a percentage of the line haul, that would be an invoice item. So now when we select that, we say, well, is this an interstate invoice or a local invoice? So let's make believe it's an interstate. And we're going to find interstate transportation charges, which represents the line haul of the shipment. And we're going to say that on average, the salesperson is going to get a 10% commission. So we're going to put in 10% there. And again, you have a spot here to put notes if you want to. When I save and close this, we've added a line to the details table. All right, let's add another detail. And we're going to call this packing labor. And again, that's going to be a percentage of the invoice item. Again, it'll be an interstate invoice. So obviously, if you're going to do this for local, you need to create a separate compensation for local. And under the details here, we're going to say interstate packing labor right there. And we'll say he also gets 10% commission on that. Now you can have as many details as you want, and the nice thing is within the employee file, it's going to recognize automatically if there was packing labor in the invoice. If there is, it will put those dollars in there. Otherwise, you can say, well, for some reason on this particular customer, I don't want to pay commission on packing labor. You'll have the ability to uncheck the use button. Okay, we're going to assume that those are the only details that a salesperson gets paid commission on. I want you to be aware of the fact that we have a copy detail button. This can be very handy if the details are very similar. Instead of having to retype everything, you can simply copy it and then make changes to it. Next thing I'm going to go to is the filters tab. This is very important. What this allows you to do is dictate where this compensation is going to apply. So since I said that this was going to only apply to interstate invoices, I'm only going to apply this to an interstate job type, not a local job type. And then I also am only going to apply this to the salesperson. It's not going to apply to a driver. And where this can be helpful is if the salesperson also is the driver. It could happen. And so we don't want to accidentally pay this person twice because he was the salesperson and a driver. So we're saying this particular compensation only applies when his title is salesperson. Okay, let's save and close this compensation method. And now you can see in our compensation methods, we have one in there called salesperson. Now let's create another one. And let's do this one per hour. All right. And what we're going to do here is in our details, we're going to say regular time. And this is going to be per hour, and the details are regular. That's the default. And right now I'm going to leave the rate at 0 because obviously different employees get paid different per hour. So I could put a rate in here and it would be available to everybody and we could change it within the employee, but I prefer to leave it blank and change it within each employee. Save and close. We've got regular time. Now I'm going to add another detail, and this time I'm going to call it overtime. So if you have jobs where certain times you have to pay them overtime, this will give you the ability to do that. I'm going to change this to, oh, it's still per hour. But now we're going to change the detail to overtime. And again, we'll leave the rate blank. Under filters, this is only going to apply on local moves. Actually, it could apply on an interstate shipment if the driver had to do a pick and hold or something like that. It's possible that they might need to get paid that way. And we're only going to apply if he's the driver or helper on that type of shipment, not an interstate driver, interstate helper, or those type of items. The next thing I want to do is just show you the flexibility of this. Let's say you are paying your local drivers based on weight that they've loaded. Maybe it's an international shipment. But the rate per pound that they get paid is based on how many men were on that crew. So what you could do is, let's just create one here called per weight. And under the details, I'm going to say, call this 2-man crew. All right, and this is going to be based on weight, and whether it's 1 pound or 1,000,000 pounds, the rate is the same. And we're just going to put a rate in. I have no idea what the rate should be, so I'm going to say it's $20 a hundred. And I apologize if that's way off. Save and close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this and copy it, and I'm going to make this a 3-man crew. And I'm going to say when it's a 3-man crew, they get, oh, let's say 15. Okay. Highlight, copy, 4-man crew, and then they get 10. Save and close. And so now what will happen is when we look at a customer file and we go to this employee that we're going to assign this to, you're going to have the ability to say, okay, this particular job was a 3-man crew, and then it will automatically grab the weight from the shipment and multiply it times the rate. So we're simply going to go into the filters here now and say, okay, this particular rate is if he's a driver. And it could happen for any of them, so I'm going to leave them all unchecked, which means we won't even consider it. So we're going to save and close this. Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call per weight driver. All right, so if he's the driver, this is it. Now I'm going to copy this compensation and I'll change it to helper. So if this employee is a helper on a job where he's getting paid by weight, and then we can go into each one of these and change it as a helper and make it 10. This one will be 8. And this one will be 6. Save and close. Go to our filters. And now we're going to say, nope, it's only when he's the helper that this is going to apply. And you could say if he's an interstate helper also. So let's go back to our driver one here and just go to our filter and say if he's an interstate driver also. Save and close. One last example I want to create is if a salesperson gets paid a flat rate to do a survey on an interstate shipment. So let's just call this survey. And we're going to say that he is going to get, I'll just call this survey. And this is going to be a flat rate, and he gets paid $50 when he does a survey. All right, now we're going to go to our filters. And it doesn't matter what the shipment type is. If he's a surveyor, he is going to get paid $50. Save and close. So that is step 1 of the employee compensation setup. We've now created default compensation methods that can be used by the different employees. So I'm going to close out of this window, and now I'm going to go to our employee list. and I'm going to find me, and I'm a salesperson. So I'm going to double click on my name. You then go to the payroll tab, and within the payroll tab you're going to see set up employee compensation methods. So you click this. So what you're going to find now is here is the list of all the compensation methods that we've created in the template. And now you can say, okay, as a salesperson, I only need to use this one and I need to use this one. And oh, by the way, if I am the salesperson, I'm going to make these the default. So I have the ability now to double click on here, and it opens up the details that we made in the thing. And if I decide, you know what, because I'm so much better, I'm going to get paid 15%, not the standard 10. So you can change it on a per employee basis. Packing labor, I'm still going to leave at 10%. I also want you to understand that within the compensation method called salesperson, for me, I have the ability to add another detail. So let's say, because I'm special, I'm going to get paid a percentage of the valuation. I could create another detail in here for getting paid based on valuation, and that will then only apply for me. It's not part of the default method for everybody else. I also want you to recognize that there's arrows here that if you wanted to change the order of these details within, you can simply use the arrows to move them like that. Okay. So I will now save and close this compensation for me, and you can see that it just kind of indicates for myself what my compensation methods are. Now, if there are times where I'm a driver, I could also say, yep, I want to also have available this and this if I actually do work on the trucks also. So it doesn't hurt to have multiple compensations available. Now, what I did wrong here is I had selected all of these to be the default, and I can't do that because it has to do with being a local driver. So one of them has to be the default, and then the other ones will be available to select if I need to. All right, I'm going to save and close, and now my compensation has been set up. I'm going to save and close my employee file. Now I'm going to go to a driver, Victor here, and again, payroll, set up employee compensation. And we're going to make the per hour the default, but he would be available to get paid by weight, but he's never a salesperson or a surveyor. Now keep in mind, you need to go in here and set his hourly rate. So let's make Victor at $12 an hour, and when he gets overtime, he gets $18 an hour. All right. Close, and we're going to assume that when he's the driver, these rates are correct. That's what he gets paid per 100 weight when he gets paid by weight. Save and close. So you will need to do this for all of your employees once you've got those compensations set up. That is everything about setting up employee compensation methods. I hope that helped.